Ever since I was little, I never believed much in ghosts. I loved reading about them, sure, but I always thought they were just stories. Things people told in the dark to scare each other. That is, until something happened in my own family. I've never seen a ghost myself, and God, I hope I never do. But I've witnessed what happens when something or someone decides to come back. It all started with my aunt, Linda. She's my dad's older sister, a quiet woman who used to laugh easily, but, for a time, seemed faded. Around that period, she often complained about feeling weak, dizzy, and oddly detached. None of the doctors found anything wrong with her, yet there were days when she barely seemed like herself. Every time our family visited the cemetery, she acted strange. Once, while lighting incense, I noticed her body swaying gently, her eyes distant, her lips trembling as if she were whispering to someone unseen. Then she began to cry softly at first, then with deep, shuddering sobs. When she finally stopped, her expression was completely calm again, like nothing had happened. My mother later whispered to me, "Your aunt was talking to someone. She said one of our ancestors came through." I didn't know what to believe. Maybe she was faking it, maybe she just missed the people we'd lost. That's what I told myself, until the night of my grandmother's funeral. Grandma passed away in winter. We decided to keep her body at the local funeral home overnight before the burial. The place was dim, the air heavy with disinfectant and flowers. Family members stood around her, saying quiet goodbyes. Aunt Linda was there too, clutching a small rosary in her hands. When the staff came to wheel Grandma into the cold chamber, Aunt Linda suddenly screamed. It wasn't a cry of grief. It was a guttural, terrified sound, as if something inside her snapped. She thrashed, trying to pull away from us. Two cousins grabbed her arms to keep her steady. Then, just as suddenly, she stopped struggling. Her breathing slowed, and when she spoke, her voice wasn't her own. It was older, softer, familiar. "Don't cry," she said. "I'm with your father now. Everyone came to meet me. I'm happy." Everyone froze. It was my grandmother's voice, her tone, her phrasing, even the way she called my dad boy instead of by name. Aunt Linda's face looked serene, peaceful even. After a moment, she blinked rapidly. When my grandfather passed away 2 months ago, none of us were ready. But looking back, maybe we should have seen it coming. For about a week before he died, Grandpa had stopped sleeping through the night. He would nap during the day, but every evening, he'd sit in his chair, eyes heavy, saying he was too restless to sleep. He kept dreaming of Grandma, who had been gone for almost 4 years. "I see her every night," he told my dad one morning. "She's calling me, but not alone." At first, we all brushed it off as grief, or maybe the side effects of his medication. But that final night, things got strange. Grandpa woke before dawn and told my mom, "I thought I was gone last night. I dreamed she came for me." Then he asked her to call my Aunt Sarah, his eldest daughter. "I need to tell her something," he said, "but only her." Aunt Sarah was busy that morning and promised to come by around noon. Grandpa didn't argue. He just sat quietly in the living room, talking with whoever came to visit. Neighbors stopped in, relatives called. Everyone thought he looked fine, tired. Maybe, but not sick. When Aunt Sarah finally arrived, Grandpa sat up straight like he'd been waiting hours just for that moment. "Last night," he said, "your mother came to me. She lay beside me, just like she used to, but there were others." with her so many of them marching behind, carrying flags, torches, something like spheres. Aunt Sarah froze. Grandpa went on, his voice trembling. Then old Mr. Langston, you remember? The man who died a few months back, he shouted from the door. Told me to lock it. Said, shut it now before they drag you out. I slammed it shut, but he yelled again, stuff the cracks. They'll slip through. Aunt Sarah's hands shook as she said, I dreamed of Mom last night too. She said Grandma had asked her how things were going with her family's plans to move out of state. Sarah said she told her mother it was uncertain. Then all of a sudden, I realized there were people now, shadows crowding outside the window. I couldn't move. Something heavy pinned me down. When I tried to push it away, it hissed, You! Laugh and cry in the daylight. Why push me away now? She said. She woke to the sound of someone gargling water, an awful, wet sound, and then spitting. She checked the clock, 2 a.m. when she told Grandpa that. He nodded. That's when I woke up too, he whispered. That afternoon, my cousin Mark, the oldest grandson, stopped by unexpectedly. He was supposed to be on a business trip, but decided to drop in to check on Grandpa. He brought a blood pressure monitor. Joked about being the family nurse, and found everything perfectly normal. They told Grandpa to rest before lunch. He smiled, said he'd take a nap first. I'm tired, he murmured, but I'll eat after I sleep. He lay down, closed his eyes. Before drifting off, he suddenly vomited everything he'd eaten that morning. My mom wanted to call the doctor, but Grandpa waved her off. Just tired, he said again. By 3 in the afternoon, he was gone. Peaceful, silent, as if he'd simply fallen asleep. No one could believe it. 2 hours before, he'd been talking, smiling, and now, nothing. Later, our neighbor, Mrs. Langston, the widow of the man Grandpa had mentioned, told my mom something that chilled her to the bone. The night before your father passed, she said, I dreamed of your mother. She was sitting at the edge of my bed with a woman who had long red hair, loose and wild. Neither of them wore anything. I asked what they wanted, but only your mother spoke. She said my husband hated her, that he wouldn't let her near. Then, the red-haired woman smiled at me. Her teeth were black. I woke up shaking. Someone later told us that in some folklore, red-haired spirits are not ghosts at all. They're the ones who come to collect. That same morning Grandpa died, I'd had a strange feeling myself. I woke up and, for some reason, imagined wearing black standing in a funeral procession. Not for him, for someone else, but maybe it was all connected. My grandmother passed away young, barely in her late 40s. She'd been bedridden for nearly a decade, and by the time she went, everyone thought she'd finally found peace. But as the years passed, we realized she never really left. After her death, strange things began to happen around my grandfather. He would dream of her often. Sometimes she sat quietly at the edge of his bed. Sometimes she faced the wall and refused to speak. Whenever she turned her back like that, something bad would happen soon after: a fight in the family, an accident, an illness. But when she appeared smiling, everyone knew the week would be peaceful. No one in the family doubted that Grandma was still around. But the strangest part wasn't the dreams. It was the butterfly. It started the first year after her funeral. A day or two before her birthday, a large black and blue butterfly would appear in the house. It didn't matter if it was the dead of winter or the height of summer. Somehow, it always found its way in. It would circle the living room, drift up the stairs, hover over the kitchen, and finally settle somewhere near Grandpa's things, on his jacket hanging by the door, or on the lamp by his bedside, and it would stay for 2 or 3 days, unmoving, almost like it was watching. Then, just as quietly as it came, it would vanish. When our family moved south to a city apartment surrounded by glass and concrete, we figured the butterfly couldn't possibly find us there. But sure enough, on the anniversary of Grandma's passing, one showed up again, fluttering gently inside a 4th-floor room with sealed windows. No one ever figured out how it got in, each time. It appeared before something meaningful, someone's wedding, a birth, even a close call that could have ended badly. It became our family's omen, both comfort and warning. One summer, my father was supposed to meet a business partner out of town. That morning, his truck wouldn't start. The engine just coughed and died over and over again. Frustrated, he came inside to cool off, and that's when a giant butterfly landed right on his knee. He tried to brush it off. It flew to his shoulder. He waved at it, perched on his back. After a while, Mom laughed and said, "Maybe it's a sign you shouldn't go." Dad chuckled too, but something in him couldn't let it go. After lunch, he fixed the truck and decided to drive anyway. He never made it. The man he was meeting had been under investigation, and when the police came to arrest him, Dad got caught in the middle of it. He was released the next day thanks to a good lawyer and a lot of luck. But he couldn't shake the feeling that Grandma had tried to stop him. Years later, something even stranger happened. My older brother had just bought a new car. He parked it inside his garage to break it in with the engine running. The doors were closed. Within minutes, the house began to fill with fumes. Everyone inside passed out: his wife, the kids, even the dog. The only reason they survived was the housekeeper upstairs. She said she heard the doorbell ring twice. When she came down to check, there was no one at the door, but the smell hit her hard. She managed to call my mother before she too lost consciousness. Mom rushed over and dragged them all outside in time. No one ever figured out who or what rang the doorbell. And there were other moments, smaller but just as eerie. Someone would suddenly stand up, step aside, and a heavy shelf would fall right where they'd been sitting. A cousin once said he felt a hand on his shoulder, pulling him back from crossing the street seconds before a truck sped past. We always said it was Grandma, watching, protecting. No matter how skeptical I try to be, I can't deny that something or someone has been looking out for us. Maybe it's just luck. Maybe it's faith. Or maybe, as Grandpa used to whisper when he saw that butterfly land on his sleeve, some promises are stronger than death. There's a small town somewhere in the south, not too far from the coast, but far enough that fog rolls in thick every night. Folks there don't talk much about what happened to the Mathers family. But if you ask the old-timers, they'll look away, maybe cross themselves, and whisper. It started with the boy named Tommy. The Mathers family used to be big. 9 siblings in all, scattered across the states. Some moved to the city, others stayed to work the land. Most of them had children, but not all those children lived long. People in town said the family was cursed. One of the sisters, Helen, had lost her firstborn during childbirth. Another, Margaret, buried a daughter before the girl even turned 5, and Paul, Helen's younger brother, had lost 2 of his 6 kids, 1 before birth. But Tommy, Paul's oldest son, he was the wild one. He was 35 now, tall, built like a brawler, with a permanent smirk that said he feared nothing. If he'd been born a century earlier, he'd have been one of those outlaws in the desert, drunk, laughing, and ready to fight anyone who looked at him wrong. Back in those days, the Mathers farm was the pride of the town, acres of green stretching Past the road, a white house standing proud in the middle. Paul was proud of his land. Until the night something started walking across it. It began one morning, when Paul noticed the wire fence had been torn. Chicken tracks scattered across the mud, but there were bigger footprints too. Human ones, barefoot, leading from the edge of the field all the way to the porch. That night, Tommy came home late, reeking of beer and gasoline. "You see anyone around here?" Paul asked. Tommy just laughed. "Nah, but I saw something by the old barn. Thought it was a drunk or something. Then I realized it didn't have a damn head." Paul froze. "What?" Tommy shrugged. "Yeah, just standing there like it was feeding the hogs. I ran so fast, I don't even think my feet touched the ground." Paul didn't laugh. The next few nights, Tommy said he heard someone humming behind the barn. A woman's voice. Soft, low, singing an old lullaby. He said it sounded sad. Too human to be a ghost. Too hollow to be alive. No one believed him, until the night of the accident. Tommy had gone drinking with his buddies from the next town over. There were 5 of them that night, sitting behind a bar, laughing under flickering lights. When it was over, he hopped on his motorcycle, said he'd sleep it off by the side of the road if he had to. He never made it home. They found him the next morning right before sunrise. The rain had fallen all night, and his body lay twisted beside a power pole, soaked in black from the oil and the mud. His face was swollen, his chest crushed. It didn't even look human anymore. When Paul saw him, he dropped his tools and screamed. He didn't remember throwing himself to the ground. Didn't remember the ambulance sirens, or the preacher who came to pray. All he remembered was the smell of rain, egg, and the whisper of a lullaby from the barn. The doctors said Tommy was gone, dead on arrival. But as they wheeled him into the morgue, something strange happened. Paul's sister, Marguerite, who lived miles away, woke up that same hour, sobbing. She swore she'd heard a voice in her sleep. "Mom, Dot, I'm sorry. I'm dead." She thought she was dreaming, but the voice came again, clearer this time. "Mom, it's Tommy. I'm gone." 2 hours later, Paul called at the hospital. The doctors refused to take the body. The nearest city hospital was too far. "He's gone," they said. "Nothing we can do." But Paul's wife begged, dropped to her knees right there in the hall. "Please," she cried. "He's my boy. Please." Something about her broke the doctor. He hesitated, then nodded. They made one last attempt, cutting open the back of Tommy's skull to drain the blood from his brain, and then, miraculously, his body twitched. Tommy came back, but he wasn't the same. He couldn't walk. His eyes wandered like they were, searching for something no one else could see. His father said that at night, Tommy would smile in his sleep and whisper to people who weren't there. Once, Paul swore he saw his dead daughter standing beside him, stroking Tommy's face with a pale hand before fading into the dark. Some say Tommy didn't really come back, not him, anyway. Just something that looked like him now, years later. Paul is old and frail, lying in a hospital bed, whispering names no one recognizes. He says he still hears Hertha woman by the barn, singing in the rain, and every night when the thunder rolls. He swears he can hear Tommy's motorcycle roaring. Down the road again, heading home. I've never really believed in hauntings. That changed the night my wife met my mother after she'd already passed. Mom died almost a year after my wife, Claire, and I got married. She'd been sick for years, kidney failure, hospital visits, endless tubes and needles. Claire and Mom were close, surprisingly close. Mom said Claire was the daughter she'd always wanted. When Mom passed, the whole family gathered at the funeral home. It was quiet, just the hum of the lights and the smell of lilies. Claire had always been soft-hearted, afraid of anything even remotely supernatural. So when it came time to move the casket into the chapel for the wake, I told her to stay seated. But she insisted on helping, carrying the small bowl of flowers and candles. That's when it started. The moment she stepped forward, her body stiffened. She dropped the bowl, eyes rolled back, whispering, "Mom?" At first, I thought she was fainting from grief. But her voice wasn't hers. It was deeper, trembling, like an echo I'd heard 1,000 times before. I panicked, tried shaking her, calling her name. Nothing worked. Someone suggested calling an ambulance. Someone else whispered a prayer. When we finally got her to the hospital, she woke up trembling, whispering again. She was here. Your mom was here. That night, after the funeral, Claire refused to sleep. She just kept staring at the ceiling. Around midnight, she pointed at something above us and screamed, "She's bleeding!" Look at her arm. I didn't see anything, but my mother's arm where they used to place the dialysis needles had always been bruised and bandaged. The next morning, I drove back to the cemetery, left a small roll of gauze beside the headstone. Don't ask me why, I just felt like I had to. That night, Claire slept peacefully for the first time since the funeral. 4 months after that, she said she could feel when Mom came back. Sometimes, it was a scent of lavender, Mom's favorite soap. Sometimes a cold hand brushing her hair when she was half asleep. Then, one Friday night, something stranger happened. It was around 2 a.m. The kids were asleep. The house was quiet. I was drifting off when Claire suddenly sat up, wide awake. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "Hear what?" Children laughing. Right outside our door. I told her it was probably the neighbor's kids. Maybe. ATV. She didn't answer, just pulled the blanket up and closed her eyes. 10 minutes later, I woke again to the sound of our bedroom door creaking open. I thought Claire had gone to the bathroom, but when she didn't come back, I got up. The hallway was pitch dark. No light from the stairs, no sound but the ticking of the clock downstairs. "Claire?" I called out. No answer. I checked the bathroom, empty. Then the kids' rooms, nothing. Only one place left. The old guest room. The one we'd turned into a small prayer space after Mom's funeral. When I opened the door, the faint smell of candle wax hit me. Claire was standing there, her back to me, in the dark. Her hands were trembling, holding a stick of incense. She turned suddenly, eyes glassy, her voice a whisper. She called me. She wanted me to light this for her. I didn't yell. I didn't move. I just found a lighter and handed it to her. She lit the incense, set it down by the photo of my mother, and whispered something I couldn't quite catch when she came back. To bed, her skin was ice cold. She curled into my chest, shivering. A few minutes later, she fell asleep as if nothing had happened. But just before I drifted off, I heard it too, a faint laugh, from somewhere down the hall. Soft, familiar, just like my mother's.